what we teach people and why we're so passionate what we do. You guys have seen me do this before. If you've been here before, do you remember who this guy is? This is Mr. Predicto. Okay? So don't base your financial plan on needs or what somebody thinks you're gonna make. You shouldn't base your financial decisions on hope, and we call that the hopium drug around here. Okay? We want predictable, we want blueprints, we want a predictable way of doing things, and we hope that you'll continue to go with us through this process for ours. And if you haven't started, we hope that you'll go with us. So Kyle, come on up. Let's give Kyle Christensen a hand. All right. So most people start their path to financial freedom the same way I have started, right? Most people don't inherit financial freedom. Okay, by far the majority of people who become financially free start the same way you and I, for the most part, have started, right? We get an education, we develop skills, we get a good job, or we create a business and run the business, right? And we make money, we work for money, okay? How do we bridge this gap though? We start making money, and we want to make it to financial freedom. I'm assuming that everybody in here wants to be financially free. Is that a fair assumption? I've heard it's not good to assume. Okay. Is that a fair assumption? Everybody wants to be financially free. Okay? But what does it mean to you? And I'm not saying just, assets producing income that equals or exceeds your lifestyle. Okay? What does it mean to you to be financially free? What would be different in your life if you were financially free? Okay, and I want you guys to write that down. Take a moment right now on the note paper. What would you do different in your life if you were financially free? If you didn't have to work for money ever again? Okay. What would you do? How would you even notice? Like the next morning you're financially free, how would you notice that you're financially free? Maybe your alarm clock wouldn't go off. Is that right? You just play pickleball for 4 hours in the morning, right? Who plays pickleball, by the way? Raise your hand. Yes. I picked it up in the last five months. I played with some friends and clients this morning, and they totally beat the heck out of me. But they've been playing longer than me, so I have a good excuse. Such a fun sport. Okay, so what would you do differently with your time? Okay, whose lives would you affect if you were financially free? Okay, who would benefit? Not just you, but who else would benefit if you were financially free? How would they benefit? How would they benefit? Why do you guys think that's important, by the way, to think about that?
Visualize it. Prepare for it.
So you can prepare for it. Awesome. What did you say, Aaron?
Visualize it.
Visualize it. What else? Any other thoughts? What determines where you put your money? I would say that what determines where you put your money is what you think is important. And if you don't think being financially free is very important, then what's going to win? You need to talk louder?
The job.
The job? Okay. I heard a really good quote the other day from Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who wrote The Gap in the Gain, which is fantastic. He said, "The things that are urgent are rarely important, and the things that are important are rarely urgent." So what happens if you spend all of your time and all of your money doing what's urgent? Do you ever get to what's important? So I want to ask you this, and this is personal for you guys to write down. What do you think the next step is for you personally to become financially free? What's your next step? And it could be different for every one of you. what's your next step? It could be, I want to be more conscious with my money. Every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out, I want to know where it's going. Okay? It might be, I want to clarify what financial freedom means to me. That could be it. Okay? It might be, I want an accountability partner. Because if you have a goal and you don't tell anybody about it, what happens to it? Yeah, because when you don't achieve it, you don't have to tell anybody. I didn't have a goal of losing weight. Yeah, you can tell I haven't. So what has to happen to achieve it? I know we want to get to opportunity costs. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. But this is what precedes it, right? This is what your motivation is. This is why opportunity costs matter. Okay? So why do you want to get there? Because at the end of the day, right, what matters to you is what's going to get done. And if this doesn't matter to you, it's not going to happen. You won't be motivated enough to make the changes or to make the sacrifice necessary. Who thinks sacrifice is a principle? Just one. Okay, two, three. It's a principle. Why do you say that? Why is sacrifice a principle? Maybe for success in anything.
Yeah, right. Because it's an opportunity cost. I mean, you are choosing to forego maybe an immediate pleasure or an immediate, like the, urgent, whatever it is, it seems, gotta have that chocolate right now, or whatever that might be, in the moment, you're foregoing that to put off towards something you want more.
Yes.
And you have to let go of some things that seem important maybe in the moment, but if you've got your larger goal, you can forego those things, and that's a sacrifice.
I love that.
And in order to get to the end that you desire,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to do that. And that's
Love it. How many of you feel like you've been successful at something in your life? And how many of you think that there was no sacrifice at all involved? Okay? That's why it's a principle. So when we talk about principles-based planning, that's part of it. That's what we teach our clients, is that we teach them principles, because principles are actually what lead to success in anything, right? Including money. Unfortunately, most of the financial planning world doesn't talk about principles at all, which is kind of strange, right? But sacrifice is an important principle. So Warren Buffett said that the difference between successful people and highly successful people is that highly successful people say no to almost everything. It goes back to what I think you were saying, right? So they have a criteria, and if something doesn't meet their criteria, they say no. And they get really good at saying no. And that was a great segue into the next topic, which is opportunity cost. But before we get to opportunity cost, we have to talk about what financial institutions think is most important, or they're trying to tell us. Because one of the questions Darren asked was, do you think it's possible that financial institutions are telling us one thing but doing something different? Who here believes that? Yeah. Okay. Do financial institutions know how to create wealth? Okay. What's the biggest, who owns that biggest building right there? What does it say on the top? Oh, a financial institution. How ironic. Okay. They know how to create wealth. Okay. But whose money do they want to control? And for how long do they want to control it? Forever? Yeah. So they can't tell us what they're doing to create wealth. They have to tell us something that gets us to give up control of our money to them, because that's their true objective. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't use financial institutions, or financial institutions are evil and it's bad that they exist. No, it's great that they exist. Okay? Actually, if we didn't have the financial institutions that we have in the United States, there would be no middle class. Okay? Imagine if you had to save every dollar to buy a property, a home to live in the Wasatch Front right now. Just would never get there. Okay? So it's good that financial institutions exist, but it's also good to know that their agenda isn't necessarily in concert with your agenda. Okay? That there's actually a little bit of a contradiction. I mean, Ryan, if you banked at Mountain America and Mountain America said, hey Ryan, put your money in our account and our goal is that you never touch your money again. Would you like that? Would that be a good selling point?
Not for me, no.
No? So they can't really be very blatant about it. So they tell us things like, hey, give us your money and we're gonna compound interest for you over time. Okay? And in fact, they use these awesome calculators that are really fancy now. Okay? And they put your, they can show you a projection of how much your money is gonna grow to over time. Now there's some surprising things about compounding interest that we're gonna talk about tonight that you might not have put together before, but tonight you will. So what is compound interest? Who wants to take a stab at it? What is compound interest? What does that mean? Okay, all right, now.
You start making interest on interest.
Okay, so you make interest on interest. Okay, so if I put in $100 into something that earns 1% compounding interest annually, what's that gonna look like? So year one, it's gonna grow to $101, right? Okay. Whoop. What about year two? Now we've got $101. What is that gonna grow to? It's too late, right? Yep. 101.01, right? Because you get 1% on a dollar. Okay.
Yeah, 102.01.
There you go. Sorry about that. Yep, that's right. Thank you. Okay, and then it just keeps going right like that. So there are certain components of compounding interest, right, to actually make it compounding interest. One is it has to have
Good interest.
it has to have interest, right? If you don't have interest, can you compound it? Okay, awesome. And then the second part is it has to compound over time. Have you guys heard the difference between, have you ever heard simple interest before? Okay, what pays simple interest? Any examples that you can think of?
Checking account, if there's any in there to do that.
Okay, savings actually will compound. Okay, so it looks like this in savings, especially now the interest rates are pretty good for the first time in the last 20 years, right? So they actually compound interest. What's simple interest? Simple interest is, instead of growing, like this, every year, if it's 1% simple, you'd get a plus $1 every year. Okay, it wouldn't be plus $1.01,
It's like original.
Yep. So bonds do simple interest. So if you buy a bond and it's a 4% bond, it's gonna pay 4%. Let's say it's $100 you invest, you're gonna get $4 every year until the bond matures. And then it's over. Then they give you your money back. Okay? What can we put our money into as investors that actually compounds interest? Any thoughts? So other than savings, what can you put your money into that compounds interest?
Real estate.
Does it have interest? So what's the interest rate on a property? If I buy a property, what's the interest rate? It doesn't have interest.
But it does compound.
It appreciates. but it can also lose value, right?
Right.
So it doesn't have compounding interest. But people in the financial world try to make it look like it does, like stock too, right? Tell me a stock that pays interest.
There might be dividends, but they don't necessarily.
Is that interest? No, it's called dividends. Yeah, and that's profit from the company that year. And they could pay 0 1 year, couldn't they? So here's the reality. Okay, we just established the 2 factors of compounding interest that have to exist. It has to actually pay interest. I don't know of any property that pays interest. They pay income, but that's not interest, right? And it's got to compound the interest. So the reality is, no investment that you and I can put our money into compounds interest. Why is that important to know? Why does that matter? What do you think? So when go ahead.
Because you have to
Brian.
understand what the banks are selling you in comparison to what they're doing.
Yeah. How many of you have had a projection, maybe a long time ago, of what your retirement account was going to be in the future if you saved a certain amount of money? And how many of you had that projection be exactly, or the result be what the projection was? 0. Nobody. Why? Because that's not how it works. So stocks and mutual funds appreciate and they depreciate. They don't compound interest. And so what Brian was saying, it's a marketing tool. The financial services industry shows you compounding interest because it's a marketing tool. If they say, hey, Brad Tolman, when you were 20, if you would just save $100 a month into these mutual funds, by the time you're 65, you'll be a millionaire based on this math, right? The problem is money doesn't work like math. It doesn't. It doesn't compound interest in investments. Okay? All right. Who thinks that's kind of strange to think about? Hopefully some of you. Do financial institutions care about compound interest? Do they have investments that compound interest? Okay, how many of you have a mortgage? Okay, that's a debt to you, right? A liability to you, and who is it an asset for? The lender. Does it compound interest? Yes. It has an interest and it compounds, right? You guys have all seen the 30-year projection of if you pay your regular payment on a 30-year loan, you pay more than double the price of the home, right? Okay, that's called compounding interest. Do banks really care about compound interest? Like they're telling us we should care? Why?
When they're getting it.
Okay, when they're getting it, but what do they do usually with the mortgage as soon as they set it up?
They sell it.
They sell it, so why do, so if they care about compound interest, why don't they keep it? Because that's not what they care about the most. There's something else that they're not telling us that actually matters more than compound interest. One of those things is what we're going to talk about tonight. So we've already talked a little bit about velocity of money. That's not going to be our main thing to talk about tonight. But that's what they care about. That's the first thing, velocity of money. How quickly does the bank want their money back? As soon as possible, Nicole. And why is that?
Because they want to put their money in something bigger.
And something else, right? And every time they get $1, do they go borrow more money from the Federal Reserve? Yes. They go borrow more money from the Federal Reserve. About $9 for every one that we deposit. And every time you make your mortgage payment, they can go borrow $9 to every one that you just paid back to them. And so when they sell that $500,000 mortgage and they get $500,000, now they can turn that $500,000 times 9. And they lend that out. That's how they create wealth. That's velocity of money. Okay? That leads us to the next component. Okay, the thing that we're going to really focus on tonight, which is opportunity cost. Okay. Opportunity cost, we need to understand a couple things before we get to opportunity cost. One is, some things about economics. So opportunity cost is an economic term. This is Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition of economics. It's a social science concerned chiefly with description and analysis of the production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. Thomas Sowell, who I think is the best economist alive in the world today, he's awesome. He says, it's a systematic study of cause and effect, showing what happens when you do specific things in specific ways. This is a great book, by the way. So great nightly reading. It's like 650 pages, something like that. It is fantastic. You can only digest about 3 pages a day, though. It's like, it's good though. All right. Why is economics important to any of us? Why do we care about economics? Or why should we care about economics? This picture kind of tells us a little bit.
It's literally the lifeblood to everything.
Okay? The lifeblood to everything. How many of you have unlimited money? Because if you did, would you actually be here tonight? Probably not. Okay. None of us have unlimited money. So that means we have to make choices, right? And Thomas Sowell talked about cause and effect, right? You had to make a choice. So tonight, you didn't have to be here, right? No government official picked you up and said, you have to get in the car, we're going to this seminar. Did they? She did, yeah. Okay, so you guys all had a choice, right? And did you give up something else in order to be here? Awesome. So we have to make choices with our limited resources. What limited resources do we have other than money? What are some other examples of limited resources? Time. Awesome. Who thinks it's easier to give money than time, like in service and things like that? It's way easier to give money. Okay. What are some other examples of limited resources?
Your physical ability.
Physical
And
abilities.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. How about talents? Is everybody actually created equal? Can all of you dunk a basketball? You know, jump from the free throw? No. Some of us are limited in that, more limited. Okay. Are all of us artists? My daughter Anna in the back, who's awesome, she is a fantastic artist. How many of you are fantastic artists? Limited resource, right? How many of you are a fantastic engineer? Limited resource. Okay. What about materials in the earth? Okay. Wood, gold, silver, you know, cobalt. Limited resources, right? So this brings us to the first thing that we need to know in order to understand opportunity cost. And that is something called cost of money. Okay, who's ever heard that term before? Okay. Very good. So cost of money. What is cost of money? Well, so let's do a little demonstration. So let's say, Thomas, you had $50 in your wallet tonight. All right? And you could give me that $50 and I would let you sit in a chair. Okay? And you make that decision. You're like, okay, well, yeah, I don't want to stand the whole time. So I'll give you the $50 and I'll sit down. It's like Disneyland, right? Everything costs way too much. So he gives me the $50. And then a little bit later, Debbie comes in with all this awesome food and she's like, it's $50. And Thomas, now what? Now what are you thinking? You wish you had that $50 back, right? You're like, I'd rather stand and eat this awesome food. Okay, but you have to make choice. So the cost of that chair was what for Thomas? It's the food that he could have had. Okay? So Thomas Sowell says, the real cost of anything is its alternative use. Okay? Anything else you could have done with that. And he's not just talking about money, he's talking about any limited resource. Time, effort, energy, talents, right? Whatever you do with that, you couldn't do something else, right? At the same time, unless there's two of you, right? Well, I think that's Star Trek, if you did that. Okay? So I like what he says. The real cost of building a bridge is whatever else could have been built with that same labor and material. So that's the real cost. That's what cost of money is. So cost of money is individual, all right? Because we don't all have the same ability or capability. We don't have the same opportunities. And so your cost of money is different than my cost of money, okay? And the greater your capability is, and the more opportunities you have, what happens to cost of money? Does it go up or down? If you become really great, what happens to cost of money? Goes up. Now we're starting to see why Warren Buffett says highly successful people say no to almost everything. Okay, they have to be picky. They think economically, right? So how many have heard this, the rules for investing from Warren Buffett? The number one rule is don't lose money, and rule number two is don't forget rule number one. Okay, you guys have all heard that, right? He also says this in this great book, which I highly recommend. It's a biography about him. He says, Buffett thought of $1 today as the $50 or $100 that it could be someday. I think that tells you why his investing rules are never lose money. Okay? And don't forget rule number one. So what is your cost of money? Think about that. You guys should write that down, and maybe you don't have the answer tonight, but think about it. What could I do with the $1? What does that actually mean to me over time? Is it 50 or $100? Or is it something that's maybe non-material, right? Like time with your family or things like that. Maybe creating memories, right? So what is your cost of money? And here's the next question. Is cost of money real? Or am I just trying to sell you on something so you don't spend your money? What do you guys think? Is cost of money real? If you use your money for something, can you use it again for something else at the same time? In most cases, no. What's that? Oh, I thought you were saying something.
It's kind of like money is exchange of time.
Yep.
And so once I give up my time, I can never go back and get that time back.
Not very many, other than Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have a cost of
Yeah, no flux capacitor. So I always talk about when I go to the mechanic, I know nothing about auto mechanics, and so I feel extremely vulnerable, like most people do with their money when they come to talk to me. If I go to the mechanic and I'm like, something's wrong, it's not working right, they could come back and say, yeah, your flux capacitor's out, but we need to order one, it's gonna be $10,000. I'd be like, okay, I don't know, can't tell you why not. Okay, it's real. All right, so opportunity cost is we're faced with choices with our limited resources. You could choose A, but if you choose A, you might not be able to do B, right? You couldn't be here tonight and somewhere else at the same time, right? So you chose A. Good job. All right. Now, I will say this, there's a caveat. Not all choices are zero sum. What does zero sum mean? What's a zero sum?
Means they don't necessarily even out value for value.
Okay.
Sometimes you might exchange something that actually benefits you more than the thing you gave up. Or it could be the other way around. You could go like, okay, I'm gonna do this instead of do that other thing, and then you end up going like, okay, well that was a real waste. You know, I mean, like you can see the value of having made another choice that would have been better, or you know, had more value for you maybe in the long run.
And usually looking back, you can see that,
It's
right?
a 20/20
Yeah.
hindsight thing.
Yeah, man, if I would have bought, you know, Amazon stock in 2000 when it was a bookstore that was weird, you know, online bookstore, we all would be rich today. All right, so not all choices are zero sum. What I mean by that is sometimes places that we put our money, it's not an either or, okay? It's not that hey, I put my money in this account and now I can never use it for anything else. In fact, how many of you here have a checking account? Okay, is a checking account a zero-sum transaction? Do you put your money in there and then you can never touch it again? No?
It's a storage.
That's, if that were the case, none of us would put money in a checking account. So we put money in a checking account because we can choose A, the checking account, and then we can also pull it out and put it in B, C, or D, right? So not all choices with our money are zero sum, but do you think financial institutions want us to choose zero sum options maybe? Where we commit our money to something that can't be used for anything else? Yeah, we call those one-use vehicles, one-use financial vehicles. For example, an education savings plan, right? Or a health savings account, or a 401k, or an IRA. They have a specific purpose, and if you use it for anything else, what happens? You get penalized. And whose money is that? That's your money, but they forget, they think it's their money, right? In fact, if you ever try and move your money from a 401k or an IRA, you really find out that they think it's their money. Okay? Now that leads to lost opportunity cost. Okay? So this gets conflated sometimes with opportunity cost. Okay? Opportunity cost just means I chose A, and because I chose A, it cost me B, right? The materials I used to build this bridge, I can't use for anything else now. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean it's not worth it. I mean, how many of you went to college, for example, and you got a degree? Okay, was it worth it? In most cases, yes. Did it cost you more than just the dollars? Yes. Okay, it cost you more than the dollars. You could have done something else with those dollars. You could have went to Bass Pro Shops, spent a lot of money, got some really cool fishing equipment. That's what I would do. Okay, lost opportunity cost is different. Okay, I don't know if you can tell what that is. Yeah, how many of us feel like sometimes we flush money down the toilet? Like, have you ever gotten a speeding ticket? That's flushing money down the toilet. Okay. What are some other ways we lose money? Like we pay a cost and we're never going to see that money ever again. What are some ways we do that in our lifetimes? What's that? Rent. Okay. Except you get a roof over your head, right? But you never get the money back and you can't use it again, right? So you can't do velocity of money. That's kind of a one-use vehicle, right? Like financial institutions are trying to push us into.
Term life insurance.
Term life insurance, how does it become a lost opportunity cost? There's only one way to get the benefit, right?
And you don't get it.
By far the majority, I'm glad you brought up term life insurance. It actually doesn't become an opportunity cost until what? Okay, if you died, it's probably the best decision you've ever done, right?
And it expires.
When it expires, because what happens to the premiums you've paid the whole time? Are they gone, or does somebody hold them now?
No, they're gone.
Does the life insurance company have it?
Oh, they've got it.
They've
But
got
you
it.
don't get anything of it.
You don't get anything back, which is their goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're probably listening. Okay. All right. So they want us to buy term. It's not by accident that it's the most common life insurance people buy, right? It's the life insurance all financial institutions want you to get. It's by far the most popular, by probably 10 to 1. Okay? And guess what happens to almost all term life insurance? It expires. Because most people have it through their work, number one, and as soon as they leave their work, what happens to their group term life insurance? Same thing that happens to their group health insurance. Goes away, right? Okay, and then they insure you during your healthy, most likely healthy period of your life, and statistically, yes, there are some that will die in that time frame. And because of another economic term, the law of large numbers, they know exactly how many will die. Okay, they've got it down to a science. Okay, actuaries, they call them accountants without a personality. Okay? That's the joke. But that's what they know. They sit there and play with numbers. They know, and that if we insure 100,000 people, we're going to be right. We know how many people will die this year out of that group based on health ratings, etc. So they're not surprised any year, even during the pandemic. Didn't affect it. Okay. All right. This happens due to unnecessary taxes, okay, that you pay. Fees that you pay over time. Do financial institutions want fees? Okay. Have you guys ever heard the term assets under management? That is actually the goal. And they actually put it out there in the open. Our goal is assets under management. We manage several $1 trillion of money, you know. They don't tell you, their measure of success isn't, hey, we helped this number of people become financially free. That's not how they measure success. They measure success by assets under management. We are holding all of these people's money, and we want to give it back when? Never. Because, what do we draw from it? Every year.
Get their interest.
Fees, we get fees every year, okay? And when do we give those fees back?
Never.
Never. Therefore, they create lost opportunity costs.